In this video, we're going to be discussing all of the basics that you need to know before beginning your adventure into the Dwarven ruins, in just under 10 minutes. Now, the first thing you need to know about the Dwarven ruins is that it's not an early game part of the Wildlander experience, but rather it's more of a late to early mid-game experience depending on your build. So if you're running in there and you're constantly dying over and over again, or you're experiencing heavy difficulties handling some of these guys, there's a good chance you need to gain some additional levels and improve your overall gear. Now, taking a look at your general Dwemer automatons, they are immune to paralysis, sneak, life drain, and poison. Now, this makes them notably more difficult for people who are running a sneak build. You'll find that most endgame content is immune to sneak or paralysis. They also have a resistance to fire, frost, and shock. Now, of the three, you'll want to focus on using shock damage because they resist it the least, only having a 25% resistance as opposed to the 80% resistance to fire and frost. They are also very well built mechanical constructs, having heavy protections to all melee and ranged damage. Taking a look at the first creature we're going to cover today, we have Dwarven spiders. Now, they have shock damage upon their death, so you'll want to be ready for that. The smallest and weakest enemy that's inside of this area as well, so typically if you can't handle them, you're not going to be able to handle anything else. If they have a crystal on their head, that means they can also do shock damage sporadically, so that's something you're going to want to keep in mind. I do heavily recommend wearing gear that resists shock damage to just help you get through these guys. Next, let's take a look at Dwarven spears. They fire crossbows with a 55% armor penetration, making quick work of any enemies with low armor rating. Typically, they also have some melee weapon as well that they'll chase you around with. They also have a natural 25% armor penetration, tacking on to the crossbow having 55%. They're notably speedy with a 135 movement speed, faster than your average size wolf. Taking a step further, we're looking at Dwarven ballistas. Now, these are ranged enemies who will purposely keep their distance from you. So if you are a heavy armor user, then these guys can be a pain because you may have a hard time actually catching up to them. Their crossbows have a 120% armor penetration, cutting through virtually all of your armor. They're also the slowest moving of the three, and their shots have a chance to stagger you each and every time that they make contact. The wiki recommends letting them shoot at you, dodging their arrows, and then closing in while they take the time to reload. Something notable about Dwarven ruins is that they have a large amount of traps and/or puzzles. Now, a lot of areas in Wildlander, especially caves and other underground areas, can have traps and puzzles. However, in these Dwarven ruins, they're even more prevalent. You'll find swinging blade traps that will just reduce your health instantaneously. There are also perilous falls littered around the location. There are also these pushers that will just shove you off of the edge of a walkway into automatons lying in wait to just pounce on you. I also noticed a large influx of expert and master craft locked doors and chests. So if you're hoping to come into these locations to gather all the possible treasure, make sure that you have either a high lockpicking skill, or scrolls of knock, or spells of knock, whatever, to be able to actually open all of these. There's also some lock puzzles where if you enter the wrong pattern, then enemies will be ejected from the machine and will fight you. I've actually experienced this all the way up to enchanted spheres and Dwarven centurions. Also, there's locked bridges needing rollers to be unclogged before they themselves can be opened, dart traps that cause poison damage that are tripwire or pressure plate based, which notably dangerous because while they affect you, they will definitely not affect the automatons. There's also poison gas, also pressure plate related, and spears that can be shot at you, once again pressure plate related. Now, taking a look away from the automatons, there are Falmer that exist down in these trenches. Now, we'll be discussing Falmer in a different video, but discussing some of their pets that dwell in these areas, you've got choruses, which have a large hardened skin. They're insect creatures with projectile weapons that you'll want to dodge. They heavily resist all slashing damage from things such as swords or axes. They are highly poisonous and pretty much resist all poison themselves with the natural 75% resistance. They have a chance to poison you with every single bite, and the poison can last for up to 4 minutes, and each time they hit you, the poison stacks. Additionally, they can cause paralysis, and they can spit poison at a target, causing poison damage for another 2 minutes. This also stacks, so my recommendation going into this is have decent armor. If you're down here by this point, I imagine your armor rating should be high, and carry with you either poison resistance potions, enchantments, or spells that can help you resist poison. Similarly, you've got Chorus Hunters, which are able to fly around, making them more of a varied enemy. They have twice as much health, but not the extra resistances to slashing damage, so it's still technically a good option against them. They are immune to paralysis themselves, and are more dangerous as bites poison targets for 5 minutes each, and so do their spits. Now, the ruins themselves are incredibly large, often with multiple areas to travel through. They can be very tricky figuring out the proper pathway, and so I recommend paying heavy attention to what way you went. As for me, I was able to get lost in these quite a bit. Taking a quick look at the different things you can find in these ruins, they're home to very valuable gear and valuable items such as Daedric items. Some of the best Daedric items are going to be found in these locations. There's also unique gear only found in these locations, as well as some magic items. If you're looking for specifics, I recommend checking out the wiki. I don't really want to spoil that for you guys, but it does list off what good stuff can be found here. Almost an infinite amount of Dwarven smithing materials are found down here. If you're really looking to power through your smithing ability, this is the place to be because almost anything you find can be smelted down and then rebuilt. Similarly, if you're someone who focuses heavy on enchanting, there is an abundance of soul gems down here that you can also use to grind your enchanting level. I found that this place is essentially a gold mine in terms of treasure. It's very useful in making a lot of money. Lastly, there's also the Lost to the Ages questline that can be used to find some of the rarest gear in here, allowing you to potentially use 2 standing stone options at once, which is a huge benefit. For me personally, I found that starting off venturing in these locations at around level 35 and up was a safe bet. Otherwise, I tended to have a very difficult time. Now maybe that's a skill issue with me, so take that with a grain of salt. Now, this was a very basic look at Dwarven ruins. I do hope that you were able to take away some information about this. I will be covering the more in-depth version of this in a future video. This was just so that you had a general idea of when and how to approach these ruins. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, consider subscribing. Stay safe, Wildlanders.